Hello and welcome. In this tutorial, we'll be deploying web servers using Ansible to AWS. You'll need a basic knowledge of Linux cloud platform like AWS and some kind of shell emulation. In this tutorial, I'll be using Git Bash. So the first thing we need to do is create our Ansible control machine. I've already created all the instances, but I'll go ahead and walk you through how to do this. So go ahead and click Launch Instance. And then go ahead and put Ansible control. I can't type. Okay, go ahead and choose Ubuntu. Now you can choose any operating system you want, but for this tutorial we'll be using Ubuntu. Keep everything as the free tier, and then we're going to create a login key pair. We're going to name it Ansible control key, so just go ahead and click create new pair. Go ahead and name it Ansible control key. Now you could put anything you want, but for this tutorial, if you want to follow along, just go ahead and put Ansible control key. Choose RSA and then choose .pem for SSH, then click key pair. Remember, any key pair that you create, you need to save the file somewhere so that way you have the private key and public key. So in the security group, we're going to create a security group. It's not going to be anything crazy. It's going to be Ansible control for the name. Security group. Go ahead and copy this and paste into the description, or you can write whatever description you want. Then we're just going to allow my IP to SSH into this instance. When you're done, go ahead and click Launch Instance. So while that's booting up, we will go ahead and create our web servers. As you can see, I already created the web server here, web server 02 and 03, but we'll do this manually. So go ahead and name it web server. Go ahead and click Ubuntu, same thing, free tier. But here we're gonna name the key pair EC2 key pair. So go ahead and click create key pair, type in EC2 key pair, choose RSA .pem for SSH, and then create key pair. Again, don't forget to save this key pair somewhere. Now for this security group, we're gonna do something a little different. Go ahead and name this something, whatever you want. I'm gonna just name it Ansible. So the first rule that we're gonna do is we're gonna do SSH from my IP. This isn't necessary, but I like to do this just in case I need to SSH into it directly. We're gonna create two more security groups. The next one, since this is gonna be a web server, we need to expose it to the public. So choose HTTP, choose anywhere. Now we need to create a security group to allow our control machine to access these web servers. So go ahead and click custom type, go ahead and choose all traffic, custom, and then choose your control group, security group. After that's done, leave everything else as default, and then go ahead and click launch instance. Now you're gonna do this for web 02 and web 03. You could do that manually, or you could click on web server, go to actions, monitor, or I'm sorry, images and templates, and launch more like this. Do that for web 02 and 3. So after that's done, we are going to log into our Ansible control machine and set that up. So open your Git Bash. Let me log out here. Clear the screen. CD. Okay, so we are back in our home directory. So you need to change the directory into where you saved those keys. So in my case, I saved it into the downloads folder. Now there's a couple ways to log into this control machine. You could go ahead and go back to your console, click Ansible control, connect, SSH client, and then copy this. So what this is saying is this is the SSH command, this is the key, and then this is the user, and then the DNS. If you don't want to use this DNS, you could actually just use the public IP. The public IP is located here. But we're going to go ahead and just copy this. Go ahead and clear the screen. Okay, so now that that's done, we actually need to do a few things. Let's see, what do we need to do? We need to go and create, I'm sorry, not create. We need to actually install the Ansible dependencies. So I've already done this, but I'll go ahead and leave all the commands in the documentation. But the first one we're going to do is sudo apt update. Go ahead and click enter, and then when that's done, the next one you want to do is this command to install Ansible. After you go ahead and download the package for Ansible, then you want to go ahead and type, let's delete this. Okay. Then you want to go ahead and type sudo apt install Ansible -y. So after that's done installing, you want to verify that Ansible is installed by Ansible -- version. Okay. So now let's clear the screen. Now we need to install our Python dependencies. So the command for that is sudo apt install python 3 -pip -y. After that's installed, we need to install the Boto package, which is pip 3.10 install Boto 3. So that's going to take a while. You could go ahead and take a break, and when everything's done, we'll move on. So now we need to create the inventory file. So I've already done all this, but we'll go ahead and go through it together. So we'll go ahead and type in vim inventory, and then go ahead and press enter. So you will have a blank screen. You could copy and paste this, or you could type it in and follow along. So we're going to type all hosts, and then we're going to individually configure this. So it has to be the exact name of your instance. So whatever you put as your web server names, it needs to be exact. So web server 02, web server 03. And indentation is very important when doing this. So the Ansible host is basically the private IP of our instance. So we have web server, this is our private IP right here. Go ahead and copy that, go back to get bash, and then paste it in. The Ansible user is Ubuntu, and the private key that we created for these instances are ec2_key pair. So what this is saying is that Ansible is expecting this file to be in the same directory as our playbook and our inventory file. Then we're going to group these web servers into a single group. We're going to type in children, then the group name that we want to use for these web servers, I just named it web servers, plural. Then we're going to explicitly list the web servers, the hosts. Once that's all done, go ahead and press escape : WQ to save and quit. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create that key pair. Wherever you saved that key for the EC2 underscore key pair, you're gonna have to go to that and copy the private key contents. Once you copy that, go ahead and VIM into EC2 key pair and then paste the private key contents. Go ahead and save and quit. Okay, so that's done. Now we need to configure the Ansible configuration file. Let's go ahead and clear the screen. So it's actually, we need to go into sudo -i, and then go into this directory here. In this directory, there's going to be a ansible.configuration file. Go ahead and copy this configuration file into a backup. So you type mv ansible.cfg_backup. I've already done this here. So after you do that, go ahead and cat into this backup file, and then we're going to copy this command here and then paste it and then press enter. Again, I've already done this. Alright, so once that is done, we are going to go ahead and VIM into the new Ansible configuration file. Go ahead and press / and then type in host key checking equals, I already changed the value here, but this is going to be true. So on your screen, when you find this line here, it's going to look like this. It's commented out. So you want to delete the semicolon and change the value from true to false. After that's done, go ahead and escape, save and quit. Alright, so that's all we need to do in that file. Let's go ahead and log out of root. Clear the screen. Alright, so once that is done, now we could test our connection from our control machine to the web servers. Go ahead and type in Ansible web servers -m ping -i inventory. So what this is going to do is it's going to ping the servers in our inventory from the Ansible control machine, and it's a success. If you get a fail, double check the key that we created. Double check this key here and double check the inventory for any indentation errors and any misspellings. Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention here is that we need to go ahead and change the permissions on this key pair. You'll get an error saying that this key is unsecure because it has write privileges. So we need to change this to have only read privileges. So how we could do that is chmod 400 and then the file. Go ahead and press enter. And after you press enter, it should have only read permissions. Okay, so now that the ping's successful, let's go create a default configuration file. So I've already done this here, but go ahead and go to VIM Ansible.cfg. Go ahead and copy this contents and paste it in here, or you can manually type it. So we already done this, is host key checking equals false. This inventory is saying that in this directory, here is our inventory file. So this is the default settings. Forks is not really, we don't really need this for our scenario, but this is just saying when we write our playbook, it's going to run on the first 5 hosts, and then the next 5 hosts, and then the next 5 hosts. But we only have 3 hosts, so this doesn't really matter. We'll keep it as default. Now these two are optional, this log path and the Python interpreter path. But if you get any errors for Python, then you might want to go ahead and put this in the default. The log path, if you're not interested in logs, you don't have to do it for this lecture. Become is basically we're running as sudo privileges. So the whole purpose of making this file is that we don't have to keep explicitly saying, you know, -i inventory or become true every time. Anyways, go ahead and save and quit. Okay, so now that that's done, if you're interested in the logs, we need to change the user and group on the Ansible log file. So go ahead and type sudo chown ubuntu.ubuntu/var/log/ansible.log. And if you want to see this would be root here, but we changed it to Ubuntu. So when we run our playbook, if you want to see the logs, you could just go to this file. Okay, so let's write our playbook. But before we need to do that, we need to assign our group variables. So I've done this here already. Go ahead and create a directory called group_vars. After you create this directory, go ahead and get in there cd group_vars. And then you're going to create a file called web servers. This web servers is the name of our group that we put in the inventory file. So go ahead vim into web servers. Now these variables we are going to assign to our playbook. So this variable get repo is assigned to this key, which is the public GitHub for the project, for the website basically. And we'll talk about this here, this path. So let's go ahead and save and quit here. Okay, so I already wrote the playbook, but we'll go ahead and talk about it. Let's go ahead and vim web.yaml to create the playbook. So the code will be in the documentation. You can manually write it or copy and paste it. Just make sure there's no spelling and spelling errors and indentation is correct. So the name is install web server package, and the host, we are assigning it to the group that we wrote or we configured in the inventory file. Become equals yes, which we're going to run as sudo privileges or root privileges if you want to say. And then tasks is where we're going to list all our tasks. So our first task is install Apache 2, and then we're going to write the module built-in.apt or apt. For the name, we're going to write item in a variable, and this variable is going to be loop. The state is going to be latest. Update cache is going to be yes. This is required if you're running Ubuntu operating system. So what this is doing is that it's going to loop through all of this as a list, Apache 2 get zip unzip. So it's going to run this and install Apache 2, and then run this again, and then install git, and then run this again, zip, and then again for unzip. when you install an HTTPD service like Apache 2, you need to start the service. So start Apache 2 service, the module, the name Apache 2, the state started, since we're starting the service, enabled, yes. Now for Ubuntu, when you start and install Apache 2, it creates this it creates this index.html file by default. And if we run the next task, which is cloning our source code, it's going to throw us an error that there's already an index.html file. So it's not going to run this task. It's going to fail. So this task here is going to remove this default index.html file. So the module is built-in.file. Then we're going to go to the path of this default index.html file, which is this. And the state absent. This is going to remove that file. Now the thing is that after you run this playbook, you either want to comment this whole thing out or delete it. Because if we run the playbook, it's going to keep deleting the index.html file, and that's going to be a bad thing. So the next task is we're going to clone the source code from our Git repository. The module is built-in.git, and the group variable that we assign, we're going to explicitly put it here, git repo, and I went ahead and commented what the key is, key and values. So index.html is this path here. So we are going to pull this git repo in this path. This is where our website will be hosted. Single branch, yes. Version, go to web. Go to web is the branch name. And notify is for handlers. Basically, for the next task, because we are starting an Apache 2 service and we're making a change to the index.html, basically the HTTP PD service, we always need to restart whenever we make a change. So we are restarting here Apache 2 built-in.service and then restarted. Now we want to put a handler here because if we run this playbook again, right, and say this was the real world, if you keep restarting your HTTPD service, it's going to cause a lot of problems. So to avoid that, we're adding a handler here, and we're going to put notify. So I commented this just for more understanding. The handler will only get executed if there is a change in the git task. So if we don't change this clone source code task, then this handler will never be called and never be started. But if we did change this, if we change something here, let's say single branch, and we put no, we change this clone source code task, therefore it's going to notify this handler that this task is okay to go. So the Apache 2 HTTPD service will be restarted. All right, go ahead and save and quit. Okay, so it looks like everything is ready to go. Let's go ahead and test and run our web service. So it's Ansible playbook web.yaml. Now if we did not create this default configuration file, what we would have to do to run this playbook would look like this. Use this web.yaml-i inventory. We would always have to specify where the inventory is, but because we made it as a default value here, we don't need to. It's always going to look into this file to see where the inventory is at. So let's go ahead and run it. Okay, so I already ran this, so it's gonna take a lot shorter time on my screen versus what you guys are gonna have. So here it's looping through and installing Apache 2, then installing Git, then loop again and install zip, then loop again and install unzip. Then it's gonna start the Apache 2 service, remove the default HTML, clone the source code, and then restart the Apache 2 service. So it's successful. Now let's check if our website is hosted. Go back to your console, choose any of the web servers, click its public IP address, and go ahead and paste it here. And there you go. Our website is hosted. Let's go ahead and test Web03. Nice. And let's go and check Web02. Awesome. So everything is working now. I hope you guys learned something, and I hope that this tutorial was short, sweet, and very easy to follow. Again, I'll go ahead and leave the codes and configurations and steps in the documentation. Thank you for checking out my video. Have a good one.